What's up everyone, and today I'm bringing to you a deck profile on my Dinomist. Now, Dynomist is a very cool pendulum deck, which I think has pretty cool art, and it's been a while since I've done my Dynomist, so I figured I might as well update it. And without further ado, let's get out of the way. Now, I noticed a lot of the way people tend to play Dinomist is more of like a going second kind of OTK or something like that, because Dynomist, they can attack for big points of damage. However, I experimented with that a little, and it just wasn't quite reliable. Sure, you could do that, but everything would have to go right. Can't get hand trapped, and you gotta draw the ideal hand in order for you to OTK, which came up very little. So I came up with more of a control strategy with this. So first off, I run the 3 Dinomist Rex. Dinomist Rex is definitely one of your big monsters. Not only does it have the highest attack, but you contribute one of the Dynamis monster you control, and you can activate one of these effects. This card can make a second attack on an opponent's monster and inflict piercing damage, or shuffle one card from your opponent's hand at random or the side of the field into the deck. Then this card gains 100 attack. Depending on what you're doing is where you're going. Like if you're going first, obviously you can use that to kind of mess with their hand a little bit. Granted, you obviously don't know what you're discarding, but they're already going to be down a little bit in card advantage, so it doesn't really matter too much. I also run 3 Dinomist Spinos. For one thing I found in like a lot of deck profiles I looked at, people were playing Spinos at 1, which I don't really get. This is your big attacker. Not only does it have the highest attack out of all the Dynamis monsters, but you contribute one other Dynamis monster to activate one of these effects. This card can either attack your opponent directly, or it can make it a second attack. So that effect plus limiter removal equals game, more or less. But that's if you can open up an ideal scenario enough for that. If you don't have limiter removal, that ain't happening. Also run the 3 Dinomist Brachion and the 3 Dinomist Ceratops. Both of these can essentially special summon themselves from the hand. Brachion's a little bit more restricted. Your opponent has to control a monster with the highest attack. And if all monsters you control are Dynamis monsters, you can summon the Ceratops. Obviously, you can only use those effects if those are the only ones to control. If you already control a Ceratops, you can't summon Ceratops this way. Next, I run 3 Dynamis Pteran. Honestly, when I was looking at this, I was thinking of the Dynamorphia Stealth Burger for some reason. When this card shows opponent monster by battle, you can add 1 Dynamis card from your deck to your hand. It can be a monster, or it can be a spell like the Dynamis Charge or Howling. So definitely a very good card you want to run. Also run 1 copy of Placios. Now I see a lot of builds running like 3 copies of Placios, which is an option you can do, but it just doesn't really get you enough. Essentially, there's like 9 cards or like 6 cards with multiple ways to get to them that I want to open up. And having multiple Dynamis monsters in the hand is cool, but it doesn't really give you a whole lot of extra. Meanwhile, on the other hand, you can kind of run less Dynamis monsters and run more control cards. Also run the 1 Ankylos. Ankylos is really cool. Banish any monster destroyed by battle with a Dynamis monster control. It's really cool. It only has 1500 attack, so that's not really going to be the best card, but when it comes up really good. Next, I run 3 Barrier Statue of the Torrents. Now, considering you mostly pendulum summon with this and special summon the Dynamis monsters, while you can normal summon them, Barrier Statue of the Torrents is just going to be much better overall, because the rest of these, you can pendulum summon it. Or in the case of Ceratops and Brachion, you can special summon them. At least with Torrent, you have like a sort of floodgate option for your opponent, and it's going to limit them on what they can do, which allows you to attack for those big points of damage much easier. And this is like one of the cards, or at least one of the 6 cards you always want to see out of this or the other floodgates you run. Also run 3D Shifter. It's a pendulum deck. They all go to the extra deck. And anything else that goes to the grave, we don't really have a way to get it back, so why not run D-Shifter, which is, in my opinion, one of the best hand traps. And you can definitely heavily limit your plays. If you have that and the Barrier Statue, there's not really much your opponent can do. Moving on to the spells, I run 3 Dinomist Charge. When this card is activated, you can add 1 Dynamis monster from your deck to your hand. And as an additional effect, if a Dynamis monster you control is added from the field to the extra deck, you can add one of those cards to your hand. So the cool thing with that is that, for the Rex and Spinos, when you activate their effects to attribute a monster for their effects, you can use the effect of Charge to add them back to your hand. So it kind of mitigates that cost a bit. Next, I run 3 Pot of Prosperity. I noticed a lot of people are running Extravagance over this, which if you're going for like a going second build, then that would probably be the best option. But I don't think going second OTK is what this deck can really do anymore. It's too slow for that. considering you want to see use Prosperity to get into your floodgates like the bear statue of the Torrent. Also run 3 copies of Limited Removal. Limited Removal is just really good. It allows your Spinos, if you use the Spinos or Rex effect, will just boost it even further. And most oftentimes, Spinos and Limited Removal end of Stealth will be a OTK. Of course, that's if you see removal, because Limited Removal is not searchable unlike Spinos. Moving on to the traps. I run 3 Dinomist Howling. Howling is a card I kind of have mixed feelings on. Like, yes, it's very good for this deck, but it's also not the fastest and can sometimes kind of hinder the deck. So when this card is activated, you can place 1 or 2 Dynamorphia Pendulum monsters from your deck to your Pendulum zones. That part is definitely really good. It allows you to go into a Pendulum summon on your next turn. If you could do that, because the downside to Dinomist Howling is that until the end of the next turn, you cannot Pendulum summon monsters. So it does got a bit of a downside. But on the plus side, it's got another effect where you attribute 1 Dynamis monster to target 1 card on your opponent controls, return to the hand. So it's got a bit of a compulse, which really does help when you have a Torrent on the field. Now next, another card I run, I would definitely say it's mandatory, and that is Summon Limit. We really don't summon all that much. Like, we might summon the Torrent, then maybe 1 or 2 off of a Pendulum summon for the Dynamis, and considering that counts as a summon in of itself. Or does it? I don't know. But essentially, you summoning more than twice per turn is very unlikely. And definitely having Summon Limit will definitely slows the game state down to where Dynamis can kind of catch up. That's why I say you want to see one of your 3 copies of either Summon Limit or Torrent, because those 2 cards will essentially limit your opponent so much to where they have to out it in some way or play under it. If anything, it'll force a negation or pop or something like that. So that's why I run 3 Solemn Judgment. They want to get rid of Torrent and Summon Limit. Originally, I was thinking about running Pulse in place of a Judgment, because originally I had a Torrential Tribute, but Judgment's just better, and it can essentially protect your Summon Limit or your Torrent, or you can just use it to essentially mess up your opponent during their turn. Like, it can be used offensively and defensively. Moving on to the extra deck. The extra deck, for the most part, doesn't matter entirely too much. It's more or less just for Prosperity targets. I run 2 Area, the Water Charmer, a couple of Barricade Board blockers, since we do have some continuous in the Dynamis Howling, Summon Limit, and Charge. Also run a Platinum Gadget, considering they are machines, but the chances of you pulling this off are very low. I do run IP Masquerena, Cerberus, Phoenix, and Unicorn for a bit of a IP play, as well as an Access Code and an Apollosa. Now for XYZ monsters, I run the 1 Abyss Dwellers, definitely really good against tier limits, a Pleiades, or the Nova and Cyber Dragon Infinity, which is also a very solid option going first. Like, if you want to go into that, you can, but that's not going to come up too often. But, you know, if you can get it with the Statue of the Torn, hey, that's just an extra bonus. What do you think of Dinomist? Think it's a pretty cool deck? Do you think it's got competitive potential? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video I make. Bye.